Just to introduce myself, hi everyone, my name is Maia Schweikert and I'm a junior at Chapel Hill studying environmental studies. And the projects that I worked on this semester centered around wildlife conservation at solar facilities in North Carolina. So this semester, I had the opportunity to work with Liz Caley's in the Durham chapter of the Nature Conservancy on several projects focused on conservation at solar facilities. And these projects, as I will discuss more in depth later, align with the mission of the Nature Conservancy, as you can see on this slide, to conserve Earth's land and water by addressing environmental issues such as climate change and biodiversity loss. And this is just a very basic introduction to their mission. So I worked on 3 main projects during my semester, and the first one that I will talk about involved analyzing images received from camera traps. So as the renewable energy sector grows, it becomes increasingly important to understand how the development of these facilities will affect local flora and fauna. And the solar facilities that I looked at had implemented permeable fences as a conservation measure. So this allows small animals that wouldn't harm or be harmed by the panels to travel through. And then larger animals, usually deer, were deterred by the fence. And then to see the interaction of wildlife with the fence, Liz and her team placed motion sensor camera traps at various places along the fencing. And I was responsible for reviewing the raw media and organizing them by whether or not wildlife was captured. And then I reviewed only the wildlife photos and recorded the qualities of those images in a spreadsheet. So some of the important categories in the spreadsheet were the species, where the species was located relative to the fence. So if it was interacting with the fence, if it was inside the facility or outside the facility, and then whether the media was an image or if it was a video. So these are just some examples of common animals that I saw whenever I was looking through the camera trap photos. My favorite were the raccoons, just because they always seem to be very playful with the fencing and with the camera. And then my next project that I worked on was performing a landscape analysis of 2 different solar facilities. So the 2 facilities that I looked at were called Phipspin and the Redmond site. As you can see, to begin this project, I received drone images of both sites. And then in the analysis, I was tasked with calculating the site area, the solar panel area, the area of pollinator vegetation, and then the average distance between pollinator patches. So I did this by developing a code in Google Earth Engine to calculate the area of drawn polygons. So this meant that I had to define the area of the site as well as the area of the solar panels and the vegetation. So after performing this analysis, I compiled my results into this table so that you could better compare the 2 different sites. So you probably noticed this from the images from the previous slide, but the Redmond and the Phipspin facilities are very different in their size and their organization of their pollinator patches. So for example, the Redmond site is much larger and it has horizontal pollinator patches that are placed between the solar panels, whereas the Phipspin site is a little smaller and has just 2 circular patches placed at each end of the facility. So after calculating the landscape statistics, I also conducted a literature review to determine what characteristics were the most important to native pollinators in the area. So this review can aid in helping solar facilities determine the best management style depending on their goal for their facility. So In this review, I determined that the most important characteristics were the size of the pollinator patches, where the vegetation was placed in the facility, what the vegetation was composed of, so whether it was composed of native vegetation or really just any flowering plants, the management techniques, so this includes whether they were, whether the vegetation was trimmed or how often lawnmowers or other equipment was used around it, and then surrounding landscape features. So in this case, we have solar panels, and then most of the facilities also had fences that were near the patches. And then the image on the right shows an example of optimal solar site organization. So it shows a bunch of native vegetation and native or natural features that allow for pollinators to move between or move throughout the facility. The last project that I worked on and am still in the process of completing is using transects on drone imagery to determine if Venus flytraps are present in an area. So this project holds the purpose to see if we can accurately use drone imagery to perform transect counts. And this would hopefully increase efficiency when Liz and her team are at the field site so that they can quicker create counts of what's being seen. So to begin this project, I divided the drone image you can see on the right into smaller, more operable transects. And then I labeled them from 1 to 48. And then I am going to begin counting the number of Venus flytraps as indicated by the presence of plants, blooms, or fruit in each square. And then after I finalize my count, for the image, it can be compared to the ground count. So the images on the right are pictures of the blooms or of the plant, and this is what I'm looking for in the image. And then, so lastly, I have so enjoyed my time working with Liz, my mentor, and being a part of an organization that I am proud of and am proud to have contributed work to. And this experience has provided me with so many valuable skills. And first, as my internship was mostly remote, I learned the importance of open communication online. And then I also learned the importance of time management. So with multiple projects and other classes, I was required to implement a specific schedule to ensure that I did not get behind on any of my tasks and to make sure they were up to the right standard. And then these projects also allowed me to expand my experience in research through performing literature reviews, organizing data in Excel, and using GIS software such as Google Earth Engine. So lastly, I wanted to thank the EcoStudio team and Liz for allowing me to engage in this experience this semester.